So let's talk about asking big questions in dreams. So something that once you have developed some lucidity, you can kind of bank on it. It's a bit more reliable. You've kind of explored different landscapes. You've played out sort of different ideas. It's kind of the time where you can start to move yourself in the direction to ask bigger questions. And I mean, this is a personal thing. For me, it's really those big questions of, why am I here? What am I doing? What is the purpose of life? I mean, these were kind of questions I asked a lot when I was a kid, and they've followed me through to my adult years. So, I mean, to kind of give you guys an idea of like how you could approach a big question in a dream, I'll kind of go through a dream pretty quickly. It's pretty boring listening to other people's dreams, so I'm just going to use this as an example. So I am in the dream and I am lucid, and I may have become lucid through directly entering the dream lucidly and not losing my awareness, or something's captivated my attention and made me recognize. So in this dream, I recognize it's a dream through some strangeness. I do a reality check. I put my finger through my hand. It goes through my hand. Even though the scene is extremely real, I know it's a dream. And so during the day, I'd kind of loaded that I wanted to ask a big question. So I look up to the sky and I say, basically what I'm asking the dream is, what is this about? Like as in my life, like what is existence about? What is life about? What is kind of like what we call the waking world? Like what is its purpose? So it was a pretty big question. And coming from the sky is this voice, and the voice is kind of really clear in what it's sort of indicating. So it says, in order to understand this place, so it's talking about your waking reality, you have to understand patterns and intergenerational trauma. And I mean, when I wrote this dream down, it became more obvious kind of what it was saying. But at the time, it was kind of like there was an understanding quite deeply about what that meant, and not just sort of the words, but kind of like the full implications of those words. So I kind of have that understanding. The dream tells me, I thank the dream. I go about and do some other things in the dream that I'd wanted to do, and then the dream ends. I wake lying in bed. So I write this down when I wake up. But it was kind of during the day that the full weight of what was said kind of comes to me. So when you kind of look at your waking reality and look at yourself, the big thing is the patterns. So I have certain patterns I carry out. You have certain patterns you carry out. Everyone around us is kind of like a big melting pot of patterns, and these patterns direct our behavior. They are patterns that have led us to the point we are here now. They're going to lead us into the future of who we become. So the big question is, are those patterns useful? What are the useful patterns? Which patterns can we get rid of? And that's really the big thing here of, we can't get away from patterns. As humans, we kind of have patterns, and we're never going to completely be free of patterns. But it's this thing of like understanding which patterns are our choice and which ones are not our choice. And then the sort of second part to that dream, the second thing it talks about, which is intergenerational trauma. So this is super interesting, where we essentially, through our genes, inherit certain things from our lineage. So I inherit certain things in my DNA from my family line, you inherit certain things in your DNA from your family line, and everyone around us. And these kind of become like not just our patterns that we've developed in our lifetime, but family patterns. And you see this all the time. You see patterns play out of alcoholism in a family, patterns play out of eating disorders in a family, patterns play out of domestic violence. And so these patterns are also kind of like, they've been inherited by those that have come before you. And so with these patterns as well, we have choices. Do we want to keep these patterns, or do we want to shell out these patterns? I think the first thing is to recognize that there is a pattern. So you recognize the pattern, you don't beat yourself up about the pattern. And then once you recognize that pattern, you have that moment of lucidity where you can do something with the pattern. You can change it, you can change course, you can move it in another direction. And so I guess for me, it really kind of shed a lot of light on what I felt my waking existence was about, in the sense of I am a collection of patterns from the past, from family lineages, from my DNA, from my experience, from my choices. And as I move into the future, those patterns shape me. And it's up to me to decide how to shape that, whether I'm consciously involved or it's an unconscious shaping. And then maybe at the end of my life, I'm better off than I was before. I have better patterns. I've shelled old patterns, and whether there's something after this or not, I'm able to sort of go on feeling like I've move those patterns in a positive direction. So this is kind of the beauty of dreaming and lucid dreaming, is you can kind of go into these questions and ask these big questions. And I guess for me, that kind of gave me a lot of clarity, and it doesn't have to be your clarity. What I'm kind of getting at is ask those big questions in those dreams and discover for yourself what your meaning is, what your purpose is, what your life's about, because at the end, it's like you're at the epicenter of your existence. So kind of taking blind faith can be useful in the short term, but in the long term, it's really about you kind of through experience becoming the person you are and developing the beliefs you have through your experience, not through dogma or your blind faith in something without the experience.